Okay, so what if the whole point of corporate social responsibility wasn't just about charity, but about completely reshaping society itself? We're about to dive into a source that suggests exactly that, a really radical new way of looking at welfare that starts right at the top of the corporate world. So, the source material kicks off with a pretty bold idea. It basically argues that these massive corporations couldn't exist without the nation that helped them grow. So, once they're huge and powerful, don't they owe something more than just making a profit? This framework says absolutely, and their role has to completely change. And this is where the framework gets really interesting. It puts forward this powerful metaphor. What if we started seeing the top business leaders in the country not just as CEOs, but as the parents of the nation? Now, this whole parental model is split into two very different but totally complementary roles. On one side, you've got the CEO, the father, who acts as the engine of the economy, always pushing for growth and expanding outwards. And then on the other side, their spouse is the mother, whose job is just as critical, to look inward and heal the wounds in society that all that rapid growth can sometimes cause. You know, this isn't about some detached, arm's-length corporate charity. The philosophy here demands a deep, personal, emotional investment. This idea of maternal empathy, that a leader's heart should literally break for her people's suffering, is seen as the real driving force for a whole new type of welfare. Okay, so that's the big idea. But how does it actually work in the real world? Well, the main principle is moving away from just giving handouts. Instead of just doling out money or food, the focus is on building something sustainable, these foundations, a whole new way to make a social contribution. And here's the four-step process it lays out. First, it starts with observation. The mothers go out and identify the real problems in the nation. Second, they team up to create these big, large-scale foundations. Third, and this is key, these foundations don't just give out aid, they research the fundamental root causes of why people are suffering. And finally, the fathers and their corporations step in to fund it all. It creates this amazing cycle of internal care funded by external growth. So, the bottom line is that this whole system is built to find permanent solutions, not just to put a Band-Aid on the problem. And this intense focus on root causes, well, that leads us to the most challenging and maybe the most controversial part of this whole philosophy. This focus on root causes brings us to the next big idea: welfare as an awakening. This is where the whole paradigm shifts. We move away from thinking about just material help and toward a much deeper, almost philosophical understanding of hardship itself. Right at the heart of this is the concept of awakening. It's defined as that moment when a person realizes the true reason behind their own suffering, the idea that their hardship actually holds a lesson that they're meant to learn. And this single idea tries to reframe everything. In this model, suffering isn't about being a victim anymore, it's a mission. The person going through a hard time is seen as having a really important job to do. First, learn the lesson their struggle is teaching them, and then teach that lesson to others so they can avoid the same fate. This leads to a total 180 on the traditional roles. The person giving help is no longer a savior, they're a student who is there to learn something. And the person receiving help is no longer a victim, they're a teacher with a valuable lesson to give. In this world, the money that changes hands isn't charity anymore. It's a tuition fee, a payment for a profound life education. This whole radical reframing is put forward as the only real solution to a broken system. You know, a system where, as the source points out, the number of people needing help just keeps going up and up, even when the economy is booming. But this vision doesn't just stop at one country's borders. The final move is to take this whole model and scale it up into a blueprint for the entire world, a proposed global mission for all of humanity. So the source splits the world into two main groups, and each one has a totally different problem that this new paradigm is meant to solve. You've got the 70% of people in developing nations on one side and the 30% in advanced nations on the other. And this leads to a two-part global mission. For the 70% in developing nations, the mission is pretty practical. Export technology for jobs the source calls 3D. That's difficult, dirty, and dangerous work to help them build up their economies. But for the 30% in advanced nations, the export is philosophical. Share this new welfare paradigm to help them solve their own very different social crises. So, at the end of the day, the ultimate goal here is to create a whole new kind of global leadership. It's not about having the biggest army or the strongest economy. It's about leadership through teaching.
by sharing this unique social and philosophical model with the rest of the world.
And that leaves us with one final, really challenging question that gets to the core of this whole philosophy. What if the real purpose of giving aid isn't just to solve a problem, but to actually learn from it? It's a total reframing of what it means to help, to suffer, and ultimately to grow, not just as individuals, but as an entire planet.